very important Economic Matters Committee, and during that time, never voted against job creation, job creators, and employers. She has a 100% score with Marilyn Free. Then she became Secretary of Labor, where she oversaw a $375 million budget and 2,000 employees. And this is a key one, and grew our apprenticeship program, very big to our economic development, to 10,000 apprenticeships in Maryland. And she's now the Secretary of Commerce, where she's essentially our Chief Economic Development Officer. With the economic shock we experienced as a result of the pandemic and all the attendant heavy lifting that came along with that, along with Secretary Schrader, our state was very well served by this great public servant. Here to introduce her boss, please help me welcome Secretary Kelly Schultz.
Gosh, it's been a long time since we've been coming to these things, Dwayne. It feels like it was just yesterday, but actually it's been a couple of years. So I can't thank you all enough here at Maryland Free Enterprise Foundation for coming out here today to not only support businesses in Maryland, but also to support what I think is the guy that helped to make it happen. The annual State of Business Address is a wonderful tradition, and I'm thrilled to see that it continues here in October of 2021. It's a way for us to take stock of what's happening in Maryland's business community, the steps our government is taking to support business, and the great things that lie in our future. I would like to thank again, Dwayne, and this foundation for your continued advocacy and commitment to fostering economic development and job creation across our state. We are very lucky to have our partners as we continue to make the Maryland open for business that we've been talking about now for 8 years. The man you'll be hearing from in a moment spent years taking what he'd learned as a businessman and using it to transform this state into a place that actually supports businesses' growth. Cutting taxes, cutting fees, eliminating regulations that stood in the way of job creation, making a commitment to providing great customer service, and showing our clients that we respect and, as importantly, value them and their services. Governor Harry Logan.
Harry Logan. I like that.
We're going to rewind the tape on that, sir. Governor Larry Hogan knows what businesses need because he is in the business of business. He has been there. He's built a company. He's watched it grow and thrive, and he knows what it takes to pick cabinet secretaries that know how to say his name right. The onset of the coronavirus, in all seriousness, the pandemic, it shook and challenged each and every one of us. And like everyone, Maryland was worried about their jobs, their health, and the safety of our loved ones. And it hasn't been easy. Not for me, not for you. But we have been lucky to have a man like my boss at the helm. He took decisive action and made hard choices that were absolutely necessary to save the lives and slow the spread of the virus. But even as we were asking these sacrifices of our people in our business community, Governor Hogan was committed to providing an unprecedented level of relief. Maryland provided hundreds of millions of dollars in emergency funding for small businesses, hotels, restaurants, nonprofits, artists, and arts organizations in the tourism industry. On March 20th of 2020, Governor Hogan declared the state of emergency. On March 23rd of 2020, we came together in his office to present the small business grant and relief loans after 3 days. Thank you, Governor. And he was the very first governor in the nation in order to do so. And they learned from us. There were direct stimulus payments to low and moderate income Marylanders, tax relief for small businesses, and funds to help companies expand telework opportunities for their employees and convert to online sales. Our state is emerging from this pandemic with a stronger economy than most any state in the country, and Maryland is well positioned for future growth and prosperity, and I'm telling you that that was not an accident, that was strategic. Governor Hogan has also encouraged people to be safe, to protect themselves and their families, and to embrace proven and reliable ways in order to be able to fight the spread of this virus. He has consistently urged Marylanders to wear the damn mask and get vaccinated. As a result, our statewide COVID-19 positivity rate has dropped more than 30% since August. Last week, we reached a milestone of having over 85% of our adults completely vaccinated, outpacing the national average. This only goes to show that Maryland is strong, Maryland is resilient, and Maryland is, without a shadow of a doubt, open for business. And I'm honored to be able to present as his two-time cabinet secretary, Governor Hogan, who is my boss, and he's keeping a list. So, Governor, thank you very much for leading us through this. Ladies and gentlemen, Governor Larry Hogan. To the best of us. It's all going to be okay. We can do that too.
Governor, thank you.
Thank you.
Get your mic on.
Boy, I'll tell you what, Shelley did a great job introducing me. Thank you. She's been a terrific cabinet secretary.
I was thinking Harry Logan sounds like an insurance
I like that.
salesman.
I might change my name.
Well, Governor, thank you so much for being here. You know, we appreciate this every year. It's so good for everybody to hear directly from you. We really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here with so many of Maryland's business leaders, and I just want to thank the organization for all the incredible work that you've been doing for decades. And I think I've been coming to these things since the early 80s, and it's just wonderful to see people coming out and supporting the business community. Thank you for all of your efforts.
Thank you. I mentioned that at lunch, I think everybody's heard about Yumi Cares. It's quite an organization, and we always give the governor a bit of a thank you, and usually a nonprofit donation, and we're doing that with Yumi Cares this year for art education, and it's this Saturday. There's a big gala at Maryland Live. I think it's probably sold out.
Well, thank you very much for that support. You know, she was teasing about Yumi Cares, and I was like, hey, Larry Cares also. But, you know, Yumi Cares is a great organization. It helps with art therapy for kids that are going through a tough time, and can't thank you enough. My wife will be very pleased. I might get some dinner later if I come home with a check from your organization, so thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. So what have you been doing for the last 18 months?
You know, it's just kind of taking it easy. You know, not much happening. It's been an incredible, really it's been 20 months, I think, if you go back to last March, as Kelly pointed out. And we have a number of our cabinet here, Dennis Schrader, I got to say, in addition to Kelly doing a great job at Commerce. And Dennis has been through hell for 20 months as the Secretary of Health. But, you know, that's what we've been focused on, saving lives and livelihoods and trying to keep our economy going. And because we have a terrific team of people that have been working so hard, we're doing really well on both. We have one of the lowest, we have one of the highest vaccination rates in the country, one of the lowest case rates, one of the lowest positivity rates, and we have the fourth best economy in America with the best recovery because we got everybody back to work, which is terrific.
What did you learn? I mean, so many ups and downs through that. So first, you know, you went through the riots and cancer and all, and then this. What did you learn about your own leadership and your own growth? How did you change throughout that time?
Well, they're all different challenges. You know, I think I did hopefully learn from going through some of those earlier challenges. Maybe I was in a better position to make tougher decisions more quickly. But, you know, what I learned early on, so, you know, 89 days after I was governor, we had the riots in Baltimore, worst violence in 47 years. I had to act and send in 4,000 members of the National Guard and 1,000 police officers. And I went through that personal challenge. with battling cancer, which also took, some struggles, but so many people were behind me in that. We went through a lot of natural disasters and flooding and hurricanes and tornadoes, but the COVID-19 was in a category by itself. I mean, this was the worst global pandemic in our lifetime, and literally everyone's life was in danger, and so we had to make very good decisions. But I think in all of those things, I just surrounded myself with the smartest people I can find. I listen to them, I trust their judgment, and I don't hesitate to act or make decisions. I don't care about the politics. I just did, I had to be the guy in the chair making the decisions, whether they were going to be popular or not. They were going to keep us moving forward, and I think we found the right balance, which is why, we're leading the nation on both, we 17 straight months of job growth, businesses booming, our fourth fastest growing economy in the country, and the best on COVID. So I think they are hand in hand. We did try to get things right down the middle and get it right. But I'm just a guy making decisions. There were literally thousands of people working day and night for 500 some days to make it happen.
I heard on the radio coming in that another latest Goucher poll, you're still incredibly well approved of by the mail-in voters, and that's, if you come through what we've all just come through and you still have that, that's more than remarkable.
Well, thanks. I'm very thankful to people of Maryland who have supported us through good times and bad. And, that Goucher poll, we actually went up recently. So it was right? Kind of incredible. But, I appreciate the support. We have Democrats, Republicans, and independents that all sort of approve of what we're doing. I'm sure they don't agree with me on everything. My wife doesn't agree with me on everything. But overall, it's not, people sometimes say, well, you're popular. Well, it's not popularity. They might not even like me, but they approve of the job we're doing. That means they approve of what our whole team has been doing for the past 7 years, and so I'm very proud of that.
Great. Let's talk about infrastructure a little bit. Start to get into some of the topics. So you are on were on the executive committee of the Republican Governors Association. You were the chair of the National Governors Association, and in that role, you really championed infrastructure throughout the nation. Obviously, a lot of news happening with that right now, and a lot of political wrangling on, is it 1.5 trillion or 3.5 trillion? Just numbers, right?
Yeah.
So comment a little bit on that and what you see, how you see that playing out, and then let's talk a little bit about infrastructure in Maryland, because I know you're making huge strides on that front.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great topic. So when I was chairman of the National Governors Association, the chair gets to pick an initiative to focus on, the chair's initiative, and I picked rebuilding America's infrastructure, and we focused on that. We held summits around the country and around the world and got the best input from the private sector, from people at all levels of government, from academia, and we put together a set of recommendations that I got all 50 governors to agree to, that we submitted to the previous president and the current president and to the Congress and both houses. We've been pushing to try to get something done. It's what Democrats and Republicans have been saying for decades. It's really important, but we haven't invested in our infrastructure. And so I testified before the Senate. I was in the Oval Office talking with President Biden about it, trying to convince him. And I held a unprecedented summit in Annapolis at the governor's mansion, where I brought together Democratic and Republican governors, senators, and congressmen. And I kind of locked them in the house for 2 days and fed them crab cakes and cocktails.
That works.
And we hammered out what really is the basis of the bipartisan infrastructure deal that is, that we got the president to agree to, and that passed overwhelmingly in the Senate with 69 votes, and is now being held up in the House by progressives who want to add $3.5 trillion of unrelated things that, you could argue whether, we can debate all those things in Congress, but it's not infrastructure.
It's redefining
and we took it all out of that for the bipartisan bill, and the president agreed to take it out, and he was touting this. I was at the Port of Baltimore with Secretary Buttigieg. They were talking about this great compromise. It's not a compromise if you say, we're only going to do the compromise if we get every other single thing that we want that we took out earlier. That's just going back on your word. So President Biden wants to get it done. He needs to tell Nancy Pelosi and the leaders in the House to get this done for the American people.
Right. So you mentioned the port, and with regard to infrastructure, we've got a parking lot in the Pacific Ocean right now. And we've got capability here. Can you talk a little bit about some of the improvements that we've made? And I know we've updated some tunnels, we've dredged, we've done some serious work.
The port is a huge economic engine for Maryland, and we've constantly invested in it and pushed to do more there for the past 7 years. We dredged out the berths to 50 feet deep, which is so they could handle the largest ships in the world, the post-Panamax ships, which enables a whole lot more goods to come in and out of the Port of Baltimore. We just delivered new all-electric cranes that are the biggest in the world that can reach both sides of the ship without turning around. We've broken records nearly every single month for 7 years, including during COVID, set records year over year, month over month. And we are moving forward on a second berth and a third berth, which we're applying for funding for now. We did a public-private partnership with Ports America Chesapeake to get all of that done, huge investment of $1.5 billion. And it's a gigantic job creator and economic engine for us. We're one of the best in the country. We can handle the biggest ships on the East Coast. We're one of the best ports. And everybody's backed up in California and in other ports on the East Coast. And we're wide open. Ships are coming in. We're like, bring them on. We actually have ships traveling, can't get in California, going all the way around and coming into the Port of Baltimore, which is great.
It's amazing. And so the Howard Street Tunnel, 126-year-old tunnel, 18 inches too short. Right?
Yeah. So when I ran for governor, I promised to do something about the Howard Street Tunnel. We had an agreement with the federal government, CSX, in 2015, which then fell apart when CSX had problems. Their CEO basically reneged on the deal. And we spent another couple of years rebuilding, putting Humpty Dumpty back together again. And now we're moving forward on the Howard Street Tunnel. It's going to add more than 10,000 jobs to the state of Maryland.
Wow.
Because we're going to double the production of the port by double stacking trains. Right now they have to unload and they can only fit a single stack train through there. So it's another huge development there for the port. We're also doing, last Friday I was with Amtrak, and we're doing the old BMP tunnel, which is 148 years old, and it's the biggest bottleneck between Washington and New York. We're going to fix that in a public-private partnership that is going to cut the time that go from Baltimore to Washington in half. Faster trains, don't have to slow down. It's a 148-year-old tunnel that actually predates the automobile and the diesel engine. It's been sitting there ever since, so we're going to fix that, put a new tunnel in.
So as you mentioned, public-private partnerships. One of the bigger examples of that's come under fire during your administration is the American Legion Bridge, I-495 expansion, I-270 expansion. So we're now at a point where that is approved for pre-construction and design, but on a slightly scaled down version of 2 lanes each?
It's shortened. Instead of doing the entire beltway, it's just broken into 3 phases. In the first phase, it moved the same number of lanes, but not as many miles in the first phase.
Okay.
But yeah, this is, you say I hate it when people say it's controversial. More than 70% of the people in the state of Maryland are wildly enthusiastic about this and very much in favor of it. Like we were just voted the most improved state in America for business. That same report, however, said our biggest weakness is the traffic congestion in the Washington metropolitan area, which is the second worst in the country. That's what we've been trying to fix. And while they keep writing negative stories about how controversial it is, and there are a tiny, whiny minority of angry, anti, pro-traffic activists, everybody else is like, fix the darn roads. So it's not controversial at all.
In fact, it's so not controversial that we enjoyed in the last issue of Roll Call. There was a bill, a Senate bill, in this year to, at the last minute, as work was already started, to stop it and require some union requirements. And the labor unions, the electrical workers unions, several unions were on exactly the same page as us, saying, you can't stop this project. We need this to go forward. This is jobs. This
is as many as 13,000 jobs directly for doing the work, which puts together union and non-union labor. Nobody has enough of them to get it done, so it's a great partnership where the ABC and all the non-union shops, companies are very supportive, and almost all the unions are supportive because everybody knows we're going to put people to work, which is what we need, and it's going to fix The Washington Post editorial board, speaking about controversial, said this is the most important thing to happen in the Washington region in 50 years because it's going to be so transformative to our economic
Those are
production.
people who sit on the Beltway every afternoon.
Exactly. They live in Montgomery County.
Another one I made note of, just one more thing on infrastructure, this crystal steel fabricators that just happened the other day. For our offshore wind products, some Maryland 50 jobs being added. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, this is an example.
I don't know that everyone knows what's happening on this front.
Secretary Schultz and I were on the Eastern Shore. This was a great announcement about a small minority-owned company on the Eastern Shore that's adding 50 more jobs because we're going to be fabricating steel for offshore wind, for making some of the things to do the windmills. And it's putting people to work. We're doing workforce development and job training, teaching people welding skills and getting people that are having a tough time finding jobs, putting them to work with a small business that's also going to, provide wind energy. So that's just one example of that kind of thing is happening. You mentioned the Secretary during Labor, how much we've done. We were nationally recognized for workforce development, adding all those apprenticeships. This is a perfect example of the kind of thing where, by being creative and innovative and focusing on those things, we can get people really well-paying, trained jobs. Same thing's happening in Trade Point Atlantic with U.S. Wind, who's also, for the first time, we're going to be actually bringing steel making back to Bethlehem Steel after all these years of not people having jobs there. So
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for that. Let's talk a little bit about crime. Maryland Free doesn't wade into social issues as a rule. We're purely about business and growing jobs. But in particularly the example of Baltimore City, it's a business issue. People are staying out of the city. And I know you've recently announced a big initiative. I see we've got some TV cameras here. They probably want to hear about it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what's in that initiative and what your plans are?
Well, I agree with you. I don't usually wade into social issues either.
Right.
I ran for governor to turn a business climate around and put people to work. But you're right. This is, Baltimore City is an economic engine for the state, and it's, it's the heart of the state. But it's got issues, problems that we're trying to fix. And two of the biggest problems are, even though it's the third highest funded school system in America, they're not doing a good job of educating our kids. And the other one is that, we have violent crime that's out of control, and more than 300 people murdered every year. And there's no question that impacts business and jobs. And people who don't, people are fleeing Baltimore City. It's got half the population that it had, decades ago. And it was the highest population in the state. Now it's the fifth highest. And we're losing businesses. It's very frustrating. We've invested $5 billion into the city of Baltimore, including $1 billion on public safety. But we're still very challenging issues. So just recently, 2 weeks ago, we had a member of the Baltimore City Council who was calling for the abolishment of the Baltimore City Police Department. And that really is what prompted me to say that, we want to reform police and make improvements, but you can't improve policing by taking away the funding. It's like saying you want to improve education, but we're going to defund the schools. It just makes no sense to me. So I said, if we want to do a better job of recruiting and getting more diversity and having a more well-qualified police department, we got to pay them better. We have to retain them. We've got to train them and teach de-escalation techniques. We need to buy body cams. All of that takes more investment, not less investment. So we came up with a refund the police initiative where we're going to put $150 million into state and local law enforcement to try to help them take care of just those things.
That's great. So what does that look like? You draft legislation for this coming legislative session in January?
Some of it we're doing right away.
Okay.
We're just going to give grants to the local governments. It doesn't have to go in the budget. Some of it, I'm sure we'll be trying to convince our friends in the legislature to not cut it out of our budget, but we'll be funding some of it in the budget that comes out in January.
Okay, great. So as we're talking about Baltimore City, they're one example of what I'm going to mention, and particularly as it relates to the legislature. There are a raft of economic development bills and tax credits that are in existence, including your More Jobs for Marylanders initiative from, I think, 4 or 6 years ago. over this past legislative session and the prior, they've been under attack, all of those bills. And there's been efforts to, quote unquote, claw back those giveaways to those corporate entities. But we have a real problem with attracting business to Western Maryland, the Eastern Shore, and large parts of Baltimore City where we desperately need employment. I can't figure it out. I don't know why this is happening, that they're trying to knock down these tax credits.
Well, that makes two of us. I can't figure it out either. It makes no sense whatsoever. These are very effective programs that are helping us grow jobs in places where we desperately need them. It's helping small businesses grow. It's helping us retrain workers, and it's helping put people to work in places where there are no jobs. And it's working exactly as it was designed. It's a great program, but you have to go backwards. I want to go and take a trip down memory lane, but the reason I ran for governor was that we were so anti-business. We weren't competitive with anybody in the region. We lost 10,000 businesses and 200,000 jobs. We had a mass exodus of taxpayers fleeing the state in all directions. And as a small business guy, I was completely frustrated, and that's why I ran for governor. Now, I wasn't able to change the entire legislature, which is still 70% very progressive, and in many cases, not business friendly. And that hasn't changed. I mean, sometimes we're down there playing goalie. I've stopped a lot of bad things from happening. Kelly pointed out some of the things we have accomplished. We've cut taxes 7 years in a row by $3 billion. We've cut regulations. We've been unabashedly pro-business. But I can't do a lot of things without the legislature, and for some reason they don't understand. I understand we disagree philosophically on certain things, but this is one helping disadvantaged areas and people who might have had difficulty finding a job to find a job, and it's working really well. And they're talking about coming after it because they somehow equate if it's good for business, it must be bad for people, and that's just not the way things are, which is why I think your organization has to get really involved in trying to convince them. It's one thing to say we don't want to change this, but to take a really well-functioning program and say we're going to eliminate it because we want to kill businesses and jobs, it just doesn't make sense.
When we get really wonky and start looking into the economics of intrastate competition, and we look at North Carolina and Virginia and Florida, where when you track the amount of wealth that leaves Maryland, that is where it's going. When we look at the details of that and why, it comes down to really three things, none of which the executive branch can control, unfortunately, and it's all legislative. It's the high personal income tax rate. So we're pushing 9%. One of those three is at 5, the other is at 0. One of the biggest is the death tax. So we have both, we're the only state in the nation with both inheritance and estate.
Yep. Yeah, let me talk about that.
Yeah,
First
please.
of all, I'm glad you brought it up because, I used to be, this is way before I ran for governor and even before I started Change Maryland 10 years ago. I was on the board of Maryland Public Policy Institute with Scott and Tom Kelso, I saw here, and a couple of others. And we did the study that was showing why people were leaving the state. And that became the impetus behind Change Maryland, which I started. It was the largest grassroots citizen organization in state history. It's how I got elected governor. And I was the one promoting that. People are fleeing the state because of these, we're not competitive because of the taxes. Miller and Bush were so concerned about what I was saying at Change Maryland that they appointed the Augustine Commission to talk about how Maryland could be more competitive. And they repeated the exact same things that Maryland Public Policy and Change Maryland said and that Maryland Free stands for. And the legislature pretty much ignored all of the recommendations and didn't want to take those steps. But let's not forget, when I came in, Maryland's overall economic performance was 49th out of 50 states. We went to number 6. It was the biggest economic turnaround in America. And while we are still losing some people because of the death tax, because of retirement taxes, because our personal income taxes are too high, I can't change them without the legislature.
Right.
We've tried for 7 years. But they're going the exodus is really slowed down to a trickle instead of flowing in all directions because we are more competitive. And because our economy is better, we have more businesses and more jobs than ever before in the history of the state. So while some of the taxes are not as competitive, the quality of life is great, and the jobs, and we have the highest median household income in America. So, we've got some good things to talk about.
Let's shift gears a little bit. We've got an interesting situation where we're going to have a new governor, treasurer, comptroller, and attorney general. Do we care? Does that matter? Is there inertia there that we lose or gain?
I mean, I think turnover is always good. I've been for 30 years, 40 years, a big proponent of term limits. The governor has term limits. A lot of other positions do not. But the fact that everybody's leaving, I think, is terrific. I think it's about time
Including
we got some
yourself,
fresh
right?
blood in there. But it is important. It's going to be critically important. And, I think it's going to be important if you want to see Maryland continue to head in the same direction we've been heading. You mentioned earlier about the people who approve of the job we're doing. You got to maybe elect a governor that's going to continue to take the state in that direction. I'm very concerned about we elect somebody that is in line with the very progressive legislature, that it goes back to being just as bad as it was under Martin O'Malley when we were 49th out of 50 states.
So with regard to elections, one of the, your opportunity every 10 years, and, the Secretary McCord went through the census, and we're now at redistricting.
Yeah.
Kind of a big deal.
It is a really big deal. It's one of the things I've been most frustrated about is that we've been pushing for nonpartisan redistricting for 7 years. Maryland has the unfortunate distinction of being the most gerrymandered state in America. The maps are ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
And so we appointed a nonpartisan citizen commission to actually draw fair maps. And I'm looking right here in front of me, and retired federal judge Alexander Williams was a co-chair of that. Thank you very much for that effort. And I think they've really, they held, I think, 30-some different hearings. They had thousands of people providing input. They drew the maps. And I think they did a very good job of not playing the politics. Because forever I've thought that instead of politicians picking their voters, that the voters ought to pick their, representatives, and that we shouldn't draw them just to help. Both parties are guilty of this. Republicans do it when they have the advantage. Democrats do it when they have the advantage. But it's not good. And so we're going to submit whatever maps that their final, they come up. I'm not going to touch the maps. I'm not going to change the maps. Whatever the citizens decided they want the districts to be, that's what we're going to submit to the legislature. And they should pass them, and we're going to work to try to get them done. Now, legislature has their own secret redistricting commission that has not shown anybody any maps, doesn't have any input, and I don't think is planning to for quite a while. They're just hiding them from everybody for a reason, because I imagine they're going to try to continue to gerrymander as they've done every 10 years for the past 50 or 60 years. But we're going to try to stop that, and I think that's what the citizens want. It's almost 90% of Republicans and Democrats and independents want fair maps. They don't want gerrymandering.
Speaking of that, why are single-member districts so important?
Well, most states in the country have single-member districts. Maryland is one of only a handful of states that kind of bunch up everybody into the same district. In some cases, I guess you may have to do something or one particular reason or another, but for the most part, it's supposed to be one man, one vote, and you should be able to pick your representative from your area rather than being jammed in with 3 people that may or may not really have anything to do with you.
And is that likely to happen?
I sure hope so. I think it's critically important. It's one of the big problems I think we have with our legislature.
Yeah. Okay. What are your top 3 or so priorities for this coming year? And I guess let's do it 2 ways, particularly in regard to the legislative session coming up. So your top priorities, and then what your biggest worries are with the legislature.
Yeah, well, most of what we do doesn't have anything to do with the legislature.
Yeah.
So I would say 90% of what we've accomplished happens all year long, 7 days a week, 365 days. But for 90 days, the legislature's here, and that's what everybody focuses on. We spend a lot of our time. I would say I play goalie. I try to stop really bad things, try to keep them from scoring, and then we also try to get some good things done. I think our focus is going to be what it's always been. We're going to focus on trying to leave the state in better shape than we found it. I inherited a $5.7 billion structural deficit. We now have a $2.5 billion surplus. I'm going to try to push those things you were just talking about, cutting taxes, cutting retirement taxes, and try to get that done in this election year. We're going to work on fair maps and nonpartisan redistricting, and because I think that's critically important for the next decade. And we're going to push, try to convince our friends in the legislature to do something about the violent crime. 2 years in a row, we got the Senate, which is overwhelmingly Democratic, 70% majorities. The Senate passed our tough crime bills, and the House did not. And we're going to try to convince them that we need to do something to stop the violent crime. So those are the things I'm mainly going to focus on. I think there'll be a lot more, but those are the 3 priorities. I'm concerned about some of the flip side of that. I think a lot of folks on the other side in the legislature want to do anti-business things. They want to raise taxes. They seem to be more concerned about criminals than victims, and I'm hoping they're not going to try to cut the support for police. And I think they're going to try to gerrymander and create really bad districts again, and we're going to try to stop them. So it seems like there might be a little collision. I try to work together in a bipartisan way and put aside the just angry politics that we see in Washington. But we're going to have some serious disagreements on major issues.
Sure.
So we've got 14, 15 months left in the term. 90 days of that is going to be spent with the legislature, and we'll try to get some things done together with them and reach across the aisle.
Great. What about this $2.5 billion surplus? My concern is it becomes mandated spending of $2.5 billion from this point forward.
My concern is that we return as much of it as possible to the taxpayers so we can put it back in their pockets where it came from. So, I mentioned that we cut taxes 7 years in a row, including the largest tax increase in history this year in January, which I got nearly unanimous support in the legislature on, which was great. We were helping, people at the lowest end of the economic scale, struggling businesses, struggling Maryland families, and that was a great start. But we want to do more to. I want to eliminate the retirement tax. I want to try to have more assistance for people that really need some more help by letting them keep some of their own money. We're going to shore up the rainy day fund and put more money in there, because the next time we have a crisis, I don't want to have a $5.7 billion shortfall. I want to have some money in there for the rainy day, which is why they call it a rainy day fund. Then we're going to do some things that I think are going to help us continue to have this great economic recovery.
What's your take back to when we were talking about infrastructure? I keep picturing that that scene of Senator Sinema being chased into a bathroom because she was being hounded by her left flank for being a reasonable, common sense moderate, if that sounds familiar at all.
I haven't been hounded into the bathroom.
Well, there we go. The day's not over, though. What is your take on the national front in particular? I mean, we have it here in Maryland. It's on the national front. This extremism and the ability to have people like you leading.
Well, on the specifics on Manchin and Sinema, I mean, the bill already overwhelmingly passed the Senate, and every Democrat voted for it. So the progressives are trying to change that argument by saying they're somehow holding up. We're talking about infrastructure versus some other bill. So there's no reason for them to be hounding them anyway, because the vote is all in the House right now. So they're harassing the wrong people. Look, I'm disgusted by politics. I have been for a long time. I mean, I ran for governor because I was completely fed up with politics.
Yeah.
And it's gotten much worse. And it's both Republicans and Democrats. It's the people on the right and the left are so out of touch with the average person in America. We just can't continue. Our democracy can't continue to do this, where the right and the left is angry, divisive rhetoric, just divisiveness and dysfunction in Washington, where they get nothing done. While we disagree, and we have some spirited disagreements here in Maryland, we have gotten things done across the aisle. We've got a lot done in 7 years. Sometimes it takes a little more listening, and compromise is not a dirty word. Sometimes you got to be willing to work with the other side, even if they disagree with you, and I think we've done that. I can tell you, when working with the governors, leading the governors, as the governors were leading through COVID, we got a lot of people to work together.
Yeah.
And unlike in Washington, where nobody, you can't even talk to another person without getting attacked by your caucus while you're talking to them. They're the enemy. And I think we have to get to a point in America where we can disagree respectfully, and we can have passionate debates, without questioning someone's patriotism or attacking them as a person.
It seems like the COVID example is a perfect one, because I remember, all you governors would have all these regional pacts where you got together and did things together completely in a bipartisan way.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that it takes something like a pandemic to bring that about.
We were talking infrastructure earlier, and I started off my NGA chairmanship focused on infrastructure, and then it switched to COVID last February or March. And I led 60-some Zooms with all 50 governors and the president and or vice president and the whole coronavirus team. And we were literally every day saying, this is what we need. And governors then had separate groups. Every single day I was talking to governors all over America. So I was leading the state and leading the governors as the governors were trying to lead in the worst pandemic that nobody knew how to handle. It was a lot to bite off. But yeah. I was very proud of the way they all worked together. People disagreed, and different states did things differently, but I'll tell you what, it was like, how are you doing this in your state? I would have had Democrats and Republicans calling me, what's working, what's not working, what are you seeing, what can we do? And we shared a lot of best practices and suggestions and ideas. It was a small bright spot in our democracy to see people willing to work together like that.
Yeah.
And maybe we can bottle that and send it down to our friends in Congress.
I don't know. I don't think that's bottleable. No one will forgive me if I don't ask the question. So you're almost done with this term. Plans for the post-gubernatorial time?
I really am focused on this current job.
Yeah.
Look, people elected me to be governor. I don't really like it when, sometimes people ignore what they're supposed to be doing to look at whatever the next job is going to be. And so I'm trying to stay focused. I got a day job. They're going to make me do this until January of 2023. So I don't think I should be off doing anything else, and I think there's plenty of time to worry about the future. I really don't know what I'm going to do. That's the honest truth. I'm just going to run through the tape. I'm going to try to land the plane. I'm going to keep giving every single day everything I've got, and I want to just leave here leaving the state in a better shape than I left it and be the best governor I can be.
We love that. We end every event on time because we've got business people in the audience.
Yeah, darn right.
And we do it every year. So we've got about another minute. If you'd like to just sum up with anything I haven't asked you.
Well, I just want to thank you, Dwayne. Great job, by the way.
Thank you.
Don't you think you did a good job? I want to thank our cabinet secretaries who are here and other members of our team from the administration and the ones who aren't here, because I'm telling you, they were already working hard, but during this past 20 months, they should get combat pay because everybody worked. I want to thank them. I want to thank the business community. Look, we're down there trying to do our best that we can, but it's not easy, and we need your help. That's the thing I'll say. Being engaged and involved in Maryland Free is important. And when the legislature comes in town for 90 days, you got to get down there and testify. There are people on the other side are testifying. Sometimes the business community, while I think most people would support, small businesses and creating more jobs, they don't always, the noisy ones, sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And there's a lot of people down there making noise that aren't sitting in this room. So I would just encourage all of you to pay more attention to politics. It really matters. Who you elect to the legislature matters, the people that you pick to be your leaders. And just thank you all for caring enough to be involved, that you come out and join this organization. And thanks for all of your support. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
John.
You can head on right out that way. All right, just two final announcements. You don't even have to sit down. This will be really quick. We have a great breakfast series of events that we do at Maryland Free. We've had the comptroller, the CFO of the Ravens, lots of great speakers. On December 1st is our next one. That is